Welcome to the NLP UK Training Podcast. I'm Fraser.
And I'm Steve Kay.
And today we're going to be talking about comfort zones.
And I'm out of my comfort zone because I've not delivered any training on comfort zones for years.
Well, actually, doing this filming for podcasts, this is the third time that we've done podcast filming.
Yeah.
But I can remember the very first time we came into the studio and sitting down at the table with Carly's camera in front of us and thinking, oh my God,
Did
there's
you
a
really?
camera there, yeah.
I thought because you were a Ciroc teacher that you'd have had in your past that you'd have been fine with it.
Yeah, so there's something
And
about
the
having
DJ.
there's something about having a camera there. If there was 100 people in front of me, totally in my comfort zone. But again, it's having that lens rather than a face. It's looking at me that I can engage with. And actually, it took me probably, I'd say, most of that first day of filming to get really, really comfortable about being here in the studio and just chatting.
We had somebody on the NLP Practitioner in 2013, 14, and he was a really successful business angel. And he'd had his own company and he'd worked in various senior roles. And I said, what's the key to your success? And he said, I live on the edge of my comfort zone. And I said, well, how come you did that? And he said, well, when I was very young, there was an earthquake in Los Angeles and I was working in Los Angeles at the time. And something made me wake up in the middle of the night. And I got dressed and went down the fire escape and got out of the building. And a car came and picked me up and took me miles out of LA. And he said, ever since then, I've lived outside my comfort zone. And that's why I've stretched myself and done new things and how I think I've been successful. Because every time you're out of your comfort zone, you kind of get growth, don't you?
Absolutely.
Even if it's a failed relationship or, you know, something didn't go well in a job or you get made redundant or something, then you kind of climb your way back, don't you? And you get, every time I've been out of my comfort zone, I can look back over the last few years and I can see I've grown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Afterwards, you know.
And really, that's how you build resilience. There's a lot of talk at the moment about being more resilient and resilience training. But essentially, if you continually stay in your comfort zone, you'll never build resilience because you're in that bubble. You're in that bubble and it's almost like you've got cotton wool wrapped around you because it's so safe in that comfort zone. And it feels nice. Don't get me wrong. It definitely feels nice sometimes to be in that comfort zone. But actually, resilience happens when we step slightly out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And, you know, not every time is it going to go right.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay for things not to go perfectly because that's where you learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the comfort zones, it's interesting, isn't it? So Carl, who's filming with us today, was saying his favourite song was Mr. Brightside. And he'd sing that in the shower or in the car. But I bet if I said to him now, could you sing Mr. Brightside for us? He'd probably bottle and not do it, even though he did say to us he played in the band, bass. But I wonder whether he'd sing Mr. Brightside for us now. Fiver says he wouldn't.
I think we're winning that bet.
Yeah, I think so.
Because he's very quiet.
Yeah. And I know that if I had a song that came on the radio, like, you know, this is the one, Stone Roses, in the car, I'm like, this is the one. But like, I've just done it.
There we go. That's how comfortable you are in the studio now.
I did a thing, yeah. But only because I was demonstrating it. I probably wouldn't do that, you know, in front of a group or in a meeting.
No one would
want
me
with
to
you.
do that.
It's okay with you because you know me.
So I think you know, it's about recognizing when everything's just a bit too comfortable. For me, I know I'm too comfortable because I get bored. I get bored very, very quickly, and I'm always looking for something new, something different. I'm always trying to push myself that little bit further. So it's about recognizing when it feels a little bit too safe, a little bit too comfortable, and just asking yourself, you know, what can I do differently? What's going to move me closer to where I want to be? What's going to excite me?
Did you know I was with a group from a company called Rico a long time ago, and we were doing some workshops on leading change. I did an exercise with one of them, with one group, and we said if you applied if a job came up somewhere else in the company or outside the company, if there were 12 requirements, how many of those requirements would you have to tick off before you applied for it? And most people said between 9 and 11. And then I said, well, in your role in the last 12 months, how many things are you doing now that you weren't doing 12 months ago? And they were like, well, 50%. It's changed that much in a progressive company. It does. But it was interesting that they wouldn't apply for a new role if there were 2 things that they couldn't do, whereas they were doing new things all the time in their present role because they were comfortable. We had somebody on the NLP Practitioner recently who had done really, really well in management in an area, but didn't want to apply for a new role in another area of the country where he wouldn't know anybody who could support him because he was out of his comfort zone. But then we did a limiting belief change with them, didn't we?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he was contacting the chief executive of this trust, which is amazing.
I think it's also about how far out of your comfort zone you get. So, there's stretching your comfort zone and growing without going completely out of your comfort zone, because that can actually be quite scary and almost have the opposite effect of snapping you back into that kind of safe space. So I think there's a limit by how much you can go out and still feel relatively comfortable that you're stretching without stretching yourself so far that it actually becomes very, very stressful and you end up snapping back.
Yeah. And I think it's also, do I really want to do that? Yeah. Is that something that I want to achieve or do in my life, career? Like if someone said, let's go to Alton Towers, I know you love going on whatever it's called, whereas I just don't enjoy it that much.
Yeah.
I just imagine that I'm like watching a film in a film set and like everyone around me screaming and waving their arms around. And I'm like, please make it be over. But I'm just imagining that I'm creating the experience in my own head. But what actually controls our comfort zones? Can I tell you what I think it is? I think it's our unconscious mind.
Yeah.
So your unconscious mind is like when you drive a car, you do it very consciously. You have to put it in gear, and then you have to remember to start the engine, and then you have to look and even explaining it to you now, I can't do it because it's all gone inside very unconsciously. So I think our unconscious mind, it holds all our habits, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think because we've got our unconscious mind, it helps us, enables us to do everything on automatic pilot. So as soon as we're out of our comfort zone, our unconscious mind can't cope because it's got a program to keep us the way we are. So when we're actually trying to get out of your comfort zone, you're actually having to reprogram your unconscious mind. It's rather like if you ever have a boat and you put it on automatic pilot, if you turn it to your port, as they say, then it'll correct itself. So going out of your comfort zone is like it's self-correcting all the time, isn't it? So it makes it much harder to do that. And what most of us do is don't bother because it's easier to stay on automatic pilot.
I can remember, this is going back, 20 years ago now, when I was teaching dancing. And I can remember getting on stage to teach my very first class after I'd passed my training.
Yeah.
I can remember standing in the wings of the stage, putting my head mic on and physically shaking.
Yeah.
I was absolutely petrified about doing this first class, but I really wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So I was very motivated.
Yeah.
And as I got on stage, I probably that first time shook the entire class. 45-minute beginners class, I probably shook the whole way through.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I got really good feedback.
Yeah.
And I was really proud that I'd actually completed it and done it. So the next week when I got up on stage, I still felt nervous, but it wasn't quite as bad. I wasn't shaky with it. So I was nervous, definitely had the adrenaline rush. And then as the weeks went on, it just started to get more and more comfortable.
And do you know what happens? Your neurology develops. So,
Absolutely.
you know, like when you've got a kiddie and they're learning to ride a bike, like Carl left to do with Charlie in a year or so, you're holding onto the saddle, aren't you? They're riding along, and then something just happens and they balance, and then you're running after them and they balance, and it's because their neurology's changed.
Yeah.
So when you did your Ciroc and you were leading on a routine or whatever, then your neurology is now developed and grown so that it's just the norm.
And hey presto, I've created a brand new comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's the key thing to remember. When you're out of your comfort zone, you're only out of your comfort zone actually for quite a short space of time. It's about practicing. It's building that competence and confidence over time. And the more you practice, no matter what it is, you'll get better and more comfortable with it until that then becomes your comfort zone.
So how do comfort zones and NLP tie together? Because I talked earlier on about the guy who did limiting belief change, and then he could start applying for senior roles in another location. But that was because he did a limiting belief change, didn't he? He got rid of his former limiting belief that he wasn't good enough or whatever it was. So I guess if you do NLP, then it's going to help you stretch your comfort zone at the same time so you can do newer things and more things that are aligned to your values.
But I think it also goes back to what we were saying on the last podcast about the language that we use. Because sometimes when we're using those modal operators of necessity, so the got tos, have tos, must dos, can'ts, etc., what happens is that kind of keeps us stuck in our comfort zone. Because and that might be one of the reasons why we are using that kind of language. So if we just listen to the language that we're using with ourselves and think about comfort zones, change the language and start to take small actions towards the thing that we really want to do, that's when we'll step slightly out of that comfort zone and start to grow.
Because I guess what you're saying is that language is a comfort zone in itself. If I'm used to saying I've got to do this or I have to do that, I must do that, I'm below the line, and that's kind of a comfort zone place to be.
Absolutely.
It's difficult to be positive with your language all the time, isn't it? It takes a bit of effort.
I think it takes effort at first. But again, it's just like the analogy that I gave of when I started dancing. I can remember when I did my NLP practitioner and being very, very consciously aware about how I was talking to myself, how I was talking to other people, and the language that I was using. All these years down the line, I don't think about it. It's just something that's become very natural. And actually, when I'm not using that positive language, that's when I tend to, it's so rare, that's when I'm out of my comfort zone, because it's like, well, why am I using language like that again?
I've also noticed like delegates from the past, like Sarah and Joe and Anna, and great people who are making videos on LinkedIn and social media. And I'm sure that when they first started out, they were nervous about it. But now when you look at the quality of what they're doing, it's brilliant, isn't it? Lovely to see.
And they're very, very confident and relaxed. And, you know, Sarah, I know that I've had conversations with Sarah where she was absolutely petrified about doing those first videos. And she would take them on her phone and delete them and take another one and delete them. And now she's more than happy to go live on a regular basis.
And run workshops on how to do it. It's amazing. So what we're saying is that if you feel you're out of your comfort zone or you're afraid of stepping out, your unconscious mind is like a pre-program, like an automatic pilot to keep you as you are, so that you can do things very, very well, like drive a car.
Yeah.
You can do things without thinking about it, but it has the negative effect that it could stop you from doing something new. So you kind of got to step out a little bit.
Just
sing
a little
Mr.
bit.
Brightside. Or,
Yeah, you don't want me to sing Mr.
this is the
Brightside.
one.
So if you're sitting there thinking, you know what, I'm not growing, I'm not moving forward, just ask yourself that question. Am I stuck in my comfort zone? Am I maybe a little bit scared to step out of that? And think about just something small, one small action that you can take today, tomorrow, to just move that little bit out and see what happens. And if it doesn't work the first time, if it doesn't feel good the first time, then just try it again, because you only get good at something by repetition. Just like driving, just like me when I learned to get up on stage and teach dancing, just like Steve, the first time that he did a training course, he's got very comfortable with that now, but you've got to get out of that zone first. Small steps is all it takes.
So we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Take care. We'll see you soon.